Greetings, everybody. My name is Robert Sean Kennedy. I will be your instructor for this mini-mester fall 2018 History 1301, Section VF6. All right, let's just go through this. The purpose of this orientation is to get you oriented with the expectations of the course and to help you understand how to prepare for this course so you can successfully finish it by December 14th. So first things you want to be aware of is to communicate. We will be using the Remind app. So you click here and just follow the instructions here. It's an app you could put on your smartphone. If you don't have a smartphone, here are some ways to stay connected on a different type of cell phone. You could also access Remind on your desktop as well. But this is where we will be communicating. I do not use the Blackboard Mail tool. I've had too many issues with not being able to communicate with students, and I very much want to communicate with you, especially if you have a question or just need clarification. To initiate correspondence, don't call me. If we do need to talk on the phone, let's initiate it here. The reason for that is I don't necessarily think it's very useful for you or I to play phone tag between disparate schedules. If you have a question, usually I can get back to you and address that question within a couple of hours, if not very much sooner than that. But yeah, if you have a question and it seems like we do need to talk on the phone, from there, absolutely, let's talk on the phone. Or you can, better yet, you can come visit me at my office if that's available to you, or we can do Blackboard Collaborate. There's several options there. Real quick, too, communicating with me. If I don't get back to you after a day, 24 hours, don't hesitate to message me back. All right, something went wrong. I got a lot of messages that day, and I just didn't get to yours. I just didn't get it. I meant to get to it, but something came up, and I just didn't. So don't feel like you'll be rude or pushy if you were trying to get a hold of me and I'm not getting back to you. Just simply say, hey, trying to get a hold of you. Here's my question. Here's the syllabus, so please click the syllabus. All right, so just looking through here. Be aware of the percentages. They're pretty straightforward. This whole course is based on percentages, so keep that in mind. Keep this in mind too, right? So we have basically two types of assignments, and I'll go through those in detail, but when we look at Blackboard more closely. But we have virtual study sessions and unit exams. All right, we have 4 of those. All right, so keep that in mind. Virtual study sessions, there's quite a few of those to do throughout the semester. They're based on the lectures. There's 7 lectures, and each of them have what are referred to as learning objectives. And you need to respond to each of those learning objectives in those virtual study sessions. But keep in mind, if you don't do well on one, or if you happen to miss one, I don't recommend not doing well on one or missing any of them, but 1 isn't going to make or break you. 2, 3 isn't going to make or break you. Now, if you start missing 4 or 5, and you're just kind of phoning it in and just typing just a few words, and you're consistently scoring low, you might get, your grade will be affected, obviously. But do just try to keep that in perspective. Collectively, all of them put together is only 20% of your grade. So let's say, just picking a rough number to make the math easy, let's say you get a 50% on each of them. Well, you've still earned 10% of your total grade. And if you're doing well on the exams, it's still possible to earn an A on this course. Definitely a B. All right, so just keep that in perspective. It makes it much, if you do well on these, though, on the flip side of it, if you do well on the virtual study guides, what's nice about that is then that you don't have to be as stressed to earn an outright A or B on these to stay within that range, because your high scores on this will help you out. So just keep that in perspective. And I'll go through these when we look at Blackboard. But down here is the schedule. All the way down here. All right, so it's broken up into units, units 1 through 4, so make sure you have that handy. But let's go through Blackboard. So here's the checklist. Make sure you sign up for Remind, download the Lockdown browser. If you're unfamiliar with the Lockdown browser, right, it is, you might want to watch that video right there, but it is a browser just like any browser, like Mozilla or Chrome or Internet Explorer, that only allows you to open up one browser at a time. You also need to activate your webcam during these exams and be ready to demonstrate that you do not have excess notes, somebody with you, or any other electronic equipment with you as well. So you need to scan your environment. Any deviation from scanning your environment, or if you show it in a way, will result in a 0% for that exam, no matter how well you do on that exam. So I will not give you the benefit of the doubt. So please, please, please be sure to scan your environment thoroughly, very thoroughly, when you're taking these exams. For this exam, for the orientation exam, you can use all the notes that you want. So use the questions that have been provided to you and take notes according to that. If you have notes according to those questions are the test bank. So you will do fine on the orientation exam. But for the unit exams, and I'll show you that in a second, you can use notes, but you can only use handwritten notes on a 4x6 note card. All right, I'll talk about that in a little bit later. Okay, so download the Lockdown browser, view the orientation video, which is what you're doing right now. Take the orientation exam by October 25th. Note, students completing the orientation exam with a 100%, you have to earn 100% on the orientation exam to be successful on it. You can take it as many times as you need to. Note, I need to grade it, so it doesn't grade automatically. But yeah, if you do that by October 23rd, 5% extra credit will be applied to Unit 1 exam. So that is just an incentive to get this out of the way and to get oriented with the course. If anything confuses you in this orientation, excellent. That means you've been confused earlier rather than later, like on a date when the exam is due. Right? So excellent. When you are done, please send me a message via Remind indicating that you have taken the orientation exam. And then begin preparing for Unit 1. This is a mini-mester. It's nice that you can do it in a short, condensed time, but keep in mind you are already behind, given that it's a mini-mester. We're condensing a whole semester's worth of work into 8 weeks, so there is no time for delay. So please jump on it right away. If at all possible, work ahead of the schedule. So hopefully you've been in this video. You've obviously been in this video already. Folder already because you're watching the video. Right, here are more resources for the Lockdown browser, including the download. Orientation exams right here. When you're ready to take it, you have to take it through Lockdown browser. So if you try to open up Blackboard through a normal browser like Chrome or Internet Explorer or Safari, what will happen, and you go to the exam, what will happen is, let's just go ahead and do it since I'm not in Lockdown browser. Click Begin. This test cannot be completed because the due date has passed. Let me fix that real quick. Glad I checked. All right, I'm back. Now, that was a good example. Sometimes that might happen. I might not have updated the due dates for the exam. Students calling me, I don't get your phone call until the next day when the exam is already expired, will be at a disadvantage. Students getting me on Remind to go straight to my phone. If I see something like that, I will get back to you and say, hold on, I will fix it as soon as possible. Usually I get back to students pretty quickly unless they are getting me, I don't know, I usually go to bed around 10ish or so. If they're getting me after 10 o'clock, but between 10 and usually I get up about 6, I usually get back to students pretty quickly. So use Remind to get a hold of me. All right, so let me show you what happens if you take it in normal browser. Right now I'm in Firefox. All right, I'm ready to click Begin, and it's asking me for a password. So I get frantic students wondering, what's the password? There is no password. The password is you must open it up in Lockdown browser. If you open it up in Lockdown browser, this will not appear. So make sure you open up Blackboard through the lockdown browser when you take the exams. You don't have to use the lockdown browser for anything else except for the orientation and unit exams. Okay, let's continue. Going back to start here. Okay, yeah, everything else you can kind of look at your own, but let's go to course content. This will open up once you've taken the orientation exam, all of the units here. Right now they are under what's called adaptive release. So clicking Unit 1, you're going to notice there are two types of content in the course. Be aware of this as well, right? I would print this out and just have it near your desk or wherever you work, or just jot these down in a calendar if you keep a calendar, which I highly recommend. But keep aware of the due dates. No due dates will be extended for any reason, right? So let me address that in just a second. I do realize things come up out of your control. We're all human. So let me explain things. Now, if you miss 1, 2, 3, maybe 3 throughout the semester of these study sessions, it's not going to affect your grade in any significant way. Now, if you miss more than 4, 5, 6, yes, it's going to begin to submit it. But again, remember, collectively, these Unit 1s, these study sessions are collectively all together. And for each lecture essay, and I'll explain what that is in just a little bit, it amounts to only 20% of your grade. So keep that in mind, right? So have the due dates handy. Now, again, there's two types of content. There are chapters and there are lectures. So each unit is going to have 1 to 2 chapters assigned. Each lecture is going to have 1 to 2 lecture essays assigned. And so let's go through the chapters first. The chapters, you're kind of on your, you noticed on the calendar, there's nothing saying chapter 1 is due. You are expected to study these completely on your own in preparation for the exam. So keep that in mind. So what happens here is you'll click this and take note. There are a series of questions at the top before you get to the text. Here's what I suggest doing. Get a notebook dedicated to this course, Spiral Notebook. At the top of the page, write Chapter 1, Columbus, the Indians, and Human Progress. And do write out the title of the chapter. This will get you aware of, well, what's ahead, right? And then physically handwrite each of these questions. Students that copy and paste and put this in a Word document and then try to find some notes, find notes, fish for notes, typically don't do very well. If you take the time, it will take you maybe 10 minutes at the most to handwrite these down. Give some space. Give about a half a page of space between each question. You might not use a half a page for notes, but give yourself at least a half a page per question. Now, as you read, jot down notes that will help you respond to each of those questions. Highly recommend doing that. If you take the time to write down the questions, then your mind will be a lot more aware of what you're really looking for. Your mind will be primed about what's ahead in this. And then as you come across information, because this information isn't just going to be all laid out, like, okay, I got question 1 done, that was in the first page, question 2 will be in the second page. You're going to see that there might be other information throughout the chapter that you can draw on to help you respond to many of these questions or provide specific examples to underscore your understanding of a question. Like this one right here. The author refers to an Albert Camus quote that is, "It is not the job of thinking people not to be on the side of the executioners." What do you think he means by that? Now, if you simply quote the author and say this is what he meant by it, that's about probably a C answer. If you quote the historian who writes that, and then explain in your own words, which you should do, you're entering into a high C response, possibly low B response. Now, if you quote the historian, offer in your own words exactly what he meant by that, and then provide examples from the chapter to explain what he means by that are relative and relevant to this particular question, then you're bordering on a high B, low A, possibly solid A response. So keep that in mind. And that's one of the questions. How do you prepare for the short answers for that? So all of the chapters work that same way. And what happens is during the exams, 2 of the questions that are assigned for that unit will be randomly selected. Basically what you're seeing here is the test bank. So 2 of these questions will be randomly selected by Blackboard when you click begin on the exam. For you to respond to. So you want to make sure that you're aware and have written these down and have reviewed. The next step I would highly recommend doing is take 10 minutes and get yourself some index cards and put these questions on note cards to use them as flashcards. On one side is the question. On the other side are some bullet points that give you a response to the question, and then examples that help respond to that question. And then throughout the day, have that handy and begin to drill yourself with this, just to make sure that it's beginning to get into your mind where you can actually learn this material. It is possible to learn material and to not necessarily memorize, but to become quite familiar with what is being asked with these questions. But in order to do that, it takes time, right? You just don't simply kind of scan through this and expect to understand what is the point of each of these chapters. It takes time. You have to respect your own learning process to go through this to actually be a formidable student in this class. Okay, now the other form of content in this class are the lecture essays. So each lecture essay comes accompanied with a study guide. I'll talk about that in just a second. Notice this. In a 5 to 8 paragraph essay, please respond to the following essay prompt. Your response should include all of the learning objectives that comprise the lecture associated with the following essay prompt. The essay prompt, this is what will appear during the exams if it is selected. So for exam 1, this definitely will be selected. Discuss the interrelationship between a successful cash crop, cheap labor, and cheap land. Discuss how slavery and the concept of race slowly developed in the British colony of Virginia. Now to respond to that, you go to these learning objectives. You don't go anywhere else, but you go to these learning objectives. Click the learning objective, and what you're going to see is a more specific response to the first part of the essay prompt found here, right? Highlighted right there. So this prompt gets a little bit more specific, and you don't need to cite any sources. I know where you're getting the information. It must come from this video and the text down below and any other information that's provided to you within these links. When you're done responding to this specific prompt here, then you move on to learning objective 2. And right here is a response as well. Again, I would approach these in the same way as the short answers that I just went over. In your notebook, physically write down the prompts. Give yourself for these about a page. And then as you're going through this, write down information that helps you respond to that. Now, to ensure that you get very specific with your responses to the learning objectives, use the study guides. And I'll show you the study guides in just a second. But let me just first say this. The response to this essay prompt right here, this general essay prompt right here, is the combined response of these learning objectives, right? So each lecture essay is going to have anywhere from, could be as low as 1 learning objective to 2 to 3. Typically, it's going to be 3 to 4 learning objectives. There's one that has 5 learning objectives. The combined response to each of these learning objectives is the response to this essay prompt right here, which will give you a 5 to 8 paragraph essay. So keep that in mind. So again, write down the prompts, physically handwrite them. This is my suggestion to you. Physically handwrite them. Go through the material as you come across information that helps you discuss the background of when, how, why Jamestown was founded. Write that down. So any dates, significant individuals that helps respond to this, events, whatever the case is. Be sure to discuss the challenges and the successes of the early settlers faced in the first few years. Any notes, any years, any individuals that come across in that particular part of the prompt, write it down. And again, this is just a reminder, provide specific examples. Now, to ensure that you get those examples in your notes, use the study guides. Study guides have very specific questions in relation to the prompt. Right, so you notice right here, it's the same prompt that was in that window we were just looking at. Gives you a guideline, at least one paragraph, so it should be at least one paragraph. Could be two. I figure it'd probably be two paragraphs, but at least one. So, and a paragraph is about 5 to 6 sentences. So note here, there are a bunch of questions. They all align with this particular prompt here. If you respond to each of those questions, that will give you sufficient notes to respond to this learning objective prompt right here. Right? Same with this learning objective prompt right here. You've got these questions here. If you respond to the questions down below, that'll help you respond to this. Maybe not 100%. Some of this you got to do on your own, but it will definitely give you enough examples, details, and references to the lecture to definitely help you earn a B, if not an A, on the lecture essays. All right, so going back here real quick. Now, there's two ways that you get credit for preparing for these lecture essays. One, the virtual study sessions. So let's go ahead and click that as a student. Right? So you have in here each learning objective you have to respond to. So you click here and you're going to create a thread. Okay, so you click the thread. And go ahead and write your name in the subject. So please write your name in the subject heading. That way, students will know to respond to it. They're all going to be everybody's responding to the same thing. So you're just responding to the learning objective prompt. You type in your response to the learning objective prompt right here. Basically, a C response is going to be very general with few examples. C or lower is going to be a very general response with very few, if any, examples to the learning objective prompt. A B response is going to be a very detailed response to the learning objective with plenty of examples, possibly some analysis that helps connect different parts of the lecture together. And an A response will just be a further development of what a B response would be. Relevant examples to the prompt that definitely underscore your understanding of what is meant by that prompt and what the text and the videos are providing. The text and videos aren't carbon copies of each other. They are complementary of each other. They definitely share a lot of the same information, but they do not. It's not me just reading the notes exactly. There'll be different information, additional information in the videos that's not in the text, and there'll be additional information in the text that's not in the video. Okay. When you are done with that, click Submit. And then what will happen once you click Submit is then you will have a list of other students who have already responded. If you're the first one, you won't. So then you need to come back later. And so what you need to do is find a student to respond to and help them out. Not everybody's going to get everything. So this is why it's called the virtual study session. See if there's additional examples. Right? And your response is always due the day after the response is for your response. So let's going back to course content, virtual 1. Let me just give you an example. So Unit 1 study session, lecture L1 stands for Lecture 1, Learning Objective 1. So by October 26th, you need to respond to Learning Objective 1, to this specific response right here. Right? So you're responding to this response right here. The next day, you need to respond to a different student. And what you're doing is just you're helping out the other student in a one-paragraph response, at least a one-paragraph response, by offering different examples, references to the lecture, events that might be associated with that prompt, whatever the case is, something that you see missing. And you will be given a grade according to that as well. There is a rubric involved. I highly suggest looking at it. It's always good to know how you will be assessed ahead of time. So if you go here, I believe grading information. Click grading information. And this little thing right here, I wish it was labeled, but view rubric. Go through the rubric to see exactly how you will be graded. Notice the learning objective response, student response, organization, and structure of it. Right. So these two are going to be the bulk of the grade. These count for something, but not as much. And you could tell which counts more by looking at the percentages. So you notice that the learning objective response counts up to 40%. The student response counts to 30%. Okay, so let me click that out. Okay, so that we're still talking about the lecture essays here. So that's the virtual study sessions. That's how you're going to be assessed on your responses to each of the learning objectives within the study sessions. Now, again, those study sessions collectively through the entire semester, each one of these counts as 20% of your grade. So yes, this definitely helps your grade, but the bulk of how you will be assessed is during the exams. And what will happen during the exam is that you will take the exam, and it'll be available right here once you take the orientation exam. Right now, it's under adaptive release, so it's not available until you take the orientation exam and successfully complete it. You can use your 4x6 note card. Now, during the exam, you're going to have to do an environmental scan. Make sure you show that you have handwritten notes, not typed notes, but handwritten notes on your 4x6 card, and it's only one card. Then you need to take your webcam and thoroughly scan your environment in front of you, on your desk, to the side, to the left, and make sure that there is no other tablets, cell phones nearby, or other notes nearby. If I'm not made aware of that ahead of time, then I'm assuming you are using other electronic equipment and other notes, and you will get a 0 on this exam. Okay, and that will be very frustrating to you, especially if I'm falsely accusing you. But I can only go by what my eyes see. So make sure that there is no, there's nothing left to chance. So going back to Unit 1, boom, 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 Virtual 1 study session, Exam 1, it's right there. Right? Do know, under no circumstances will deadlines, and this includes exams, be extended. However, if you miss an exam, I understand things happen, right? Or you don't do as well as you wanted to. The next exam, Exam 2 or Exam 3 or Exam 4, will replace previously missed or lower scored exams minus 5%. Now, one, there's a reason beyond that, just because me being understanding of circumstances that might be beyond your control. You just got too busy, whatever the case. The other reason for that is that when you take Exam 2, it's going to ask you to respond to lecture essay number 1, Race, Class, and Slavery. And that's going to help you further develop your essay to get a better score. And 2, the repetition helps actually learn this information. And believe it or not, the goal is for you to actually learn this information. So once you so do be aware of that. Don't throw your notes away, in other words. But yeah, that'll give you the opportunity, in case something comes up, that you will have the benefit of the doubt to get your next exams to a higher grade to help you with previous exams. So keep that in mind. Okay, I think that's about it. With the lecture essays for the exam preparation, my advice for that, listen to this very carefully. Just like the short answer questions, in your notebook, handwritten notes, create flashcards per learning objective. You might even want to create flashcards for each of the study questions in the study guides. What else? Oh yeah, and then drill yourself throughout it. And then additionally, practice writing the essay twice at least on your own. Take the half an hour that it might take to physically handwrite this. You're going to type it during the actual exam since this is an online class, but during your preparation, I suggest handwriting it. It will help you become more familiar with it, right? You don't need to memorize everything. You will remember everything if you take you will remember many things if you take my advice. You don't have to remember everything. Keep in mind that you can miss some items and still earn an A. 10% can constitute missing a few items here and there, but you can still earn an A. And if you make sure you are submitting all of your study sessions throughout the semester, you could afford to earn 80%. 80% or higher on your exam. If you are where you can use your notes during these study sessions, you can use your notes absolutely because you're submitting it through an HTML window. Let me suggest something here too. Let's go to these virtual study sessions. Okay, I don't allow you guys to use to submit a file. Some students aren't able to access those files, and I'm not able to access those files. And so all you can use is this window here. So you're going to type your thing here. What I suggest doing for this is to go to a Word document, right, and type your response in a Word document. From there, copy and paste and put your response in here. Highly suggest doing that because if Blackboard goes out and you're in the middle of typing, and Blackboard goes out, the electricity goes out, it doesn't automatically save, unfortunately, in this window. So keep that in mind. And then you click Submit. All right. So, yeah, if you do well on this, you won't have to worry too much about the exams. Okay, so 32 minutes, we're in. Excellent. I'm glad you guys have gotten through this whole thing. Please let me know if you have any questions, concerns, and let's have a wonderful session. Get me on Remind if you are confused or just need clarification. You might absolutely understand it, but you just want to clarify your understanding of any kind of items in here. Use those questions provided. That is the study bank. So if you have a response to each of the questions in the orientation link that's provided to you, you will ace this orientation exam on the first try. All right, that's all I've got. I'll talk with you guys later. Take care.